Hello, everyone. This is Adam Meister, the Bitcoin Meister, the Disrupt Meister. Welcome to This Week in Bitcoin. Today is August the 2nd, 2019. Strong hand, long-term thinking, value your wealth in Bitcoin, 5-digit realm, in motion. Personal responsibility is a new counterculture. One Bitcoin equals one Bitcoin. Offended by selling. Don't FOMO on altcoins. Okay, so here he is. Simon Dixon is back on the show. We got a one-on-one this week in Bitcoin. Simon, welcome back.
Thanks for having me again, Adam. Always a pleasure to be here.
All right, so let's jump into it. I think it was yesterday or 2 days ago, the last of the United States crypto hearings for now. What's your take on, you heard and watched some of these hearings. Will Facebook be able to get their way? That's the bottom line. Are they going to be able to get their Libra? Is the United States going to give in?
I don't think the United States needs to give in. It's just a question of whether US will be able to participate or not, which seems to be the way that crypto is going right now. There's like the rest of the world and then there's the US, and the US are deciding whether they want to be a part of it or not, or whether companies need to relocate. So many of our portfolio companies like Circle, they've relocated, Poloniex to Bermuda, Bahamas, I think. And Abra, another company, relocating outside the US or restricting using it from the US. And if Facebook has to launch their own cryptocurrency and use the wallet from Switzerland and use the wallet to restrict US people, then that's probably the path it would take if US regulators decide that they don't want this to be. It's a question of there's international competition, we have global jurisdictions, and you either try and fight the trend or you try and support the trend. And if you fight the trend, then the innovation goes offshore, and then you end up giving all your data overseas. It's kind of like when China banned all the exchanges. They all just went to Korea, Japan, and people that put together regulatory structures ended up collecting all the data for the exchanges. And so I believe that Facebook is shaking up the world with this project. They quite rightly put it out of Switzerland for a reason. And the Facebook hearings and the cryptocurrency hearings show why they were right to do this out of Switzerland. And, these hearings just show why Bitcoin exists, because the decentralized nature of Bitcoin is the reason why Satoshi Nakamoto is not in a hearing right now explaining himself, and Bitcoin's not getting shut down. So it's great. I've really enjoyed seeing all these conversations move to the front of the world, Facebook shake up the world, and regulators and everyone around the world being forced to, okay, we can't brush this aside anymore. We've got to decide what we're going to do. And if we make the wrong decision, it may determine the future of our country and its competitiveness.
Bottom line, you see Libra happening?
I think it will happen, yeah.
Okay, because there are some people who I guess are making the United States the be-all that ends all. They think it's not going to happen because after what they saw, they think there's going to be too much regulatory scrutiny. But you're saying, who cares what the United States says? They've got a backup plan where they could do it outside of the United States.
Absolutely, yeah. We have competing jurisdictions now, and that's the beautiful part of this world.
I believe it is going to happen. But I don't think they're going to cross the United States. I think they're going to do whatever it takes to follow the rules of the United States. And the taste that I got from that hearing is that there's some pockets of the United States government that's going to want to make them jump through all sorts of ridiculous hoops. And again, I believe they should be able to do this. I don't think Facebook is the greatest company in the world, but that's my opinion. But they should. I think this is a lesson to the world that it's not just countries that can produce currency. And if the United States going to let this happen so easily? That's what keeps going through my head. Like, this is an earth-changing event we're talking about here, Simon, if this really happens.
Absolutely. I mean, this is, look, US are going to make a decision at the end. They either give all the data offshore, they either let Telegram do it and give Russia all the data, or they let WeChat do it and give China all the data, or they let Facebook do it and they collect all the data globally and become a bank for the world. And they'll probably back it by the dollar. So, you know, the pushing back on this is only going to drive everything outside of the country. And they just need to accept that we are in a multi-currency world. If they let JP Morgan create their coin and then they say Facebook can't, essentially this is just a reallocation of power. So I don't think it's a regulatory thing. This is Silicon Valley taking on Wall Street, and Wall Street using lobbyist power in order to make sure that Silicon Valley doesn't take on Wall Street.
Did you have any positive or negative takeaways you'd like to share about what you saw from the hearings? Anything that shocked you?
Well, I mean, there was all the comical stuff. You know, we got the viral videos of talking about shitcoins and everything. I mean, it was just a very comical affair. It was a real big week for crypto. It was a real big time. You know, it just shows that, I mean, it doesn't surprise me, but how ignorant the people that are part of our banking committees are in terms of just banking, let alone cryptocurrencies. You know, they've got so far that the people that are going to make the decisions of this are not the people that understand this topic. But I think it was great to see the range of different thoughts. Some people comparing cryptocurrency to the innovation of Osama bin Laden was very comical. And other people saying Bitcoin's here to stay, it can't be stopped, there's nothing you can do. We either embrace it or we just get eaten alive by Bitcoin. And I think it was just great to see the complete range of different thoughts. Yeah, it was just great exposure for the industry. Move everything forward, move all the conversations forward.
All right, so we're gonna, when Libra happens, this will be the first major corporate coin. I mean, that's the only way I can assume it, I can call it. And I assume after that, there is going to be a lot of other companies that are going to try to do this. Do you see the floodgates opening if this gets approved?
Oh yeah, I mean, you know, if Facebook follows the model, then we're going to enter into a world of tech companies having cryptocurrencies, banks having cryptocurrencies, central banks having cryptocurrency. Everyone's going to be competing, and everyone's going to want a piece of the pie.
I mean, you just said that. You said that so incredibly calmly, but I need to point out to everyone that the whole freaking world is going to change after this. I mean, this is an earth-shattering type of thing. I mean, some of these third world country currencies, I mean, there will be corporations, their currencies will be worth so much more than these third world countries. I mean, there's going to be a power shift. I mean, it's hard to understand what the world is going to look like in 10 years if in 2 years we've got a bunch of corporate coins out there. It's amazing. I mean, can you see on CoinMarketCap, Bitcoin not being number one in terms of market cap anymore because one of these corporate coins manipulates the supply so that they're number one?
That can happen. So it's going to be interesting to see what all the statistics have and how they adjust to it. You know, I mean, that was happening during the ICO boom. You know, people were just printing up tokens and releasing a certain amount of them, and that was changing. You know, I mean, XRP is another example of that. You know, so it already happened on that scale. I'm sure it's going to happen on the corporate scale.
These are all XRPs, basically. I mean, backed by legitimate companies, though. I mean, they're going to print a bunch of money out of thin air, centrally controlled by a corporation, which is similar to XRP. Thus, I mean, these are successful corporations. They're going to know how to market themselves, and the way you market yourself is you get listed in that top 10 on CoinMarketCap. And so, I mean, if this really happens soon, I foresee the top 10 being like all corporate coins eventually, and maybe with Bitcoin up there too. Still, Bitcoin obviously being the best. And at that point, you know, all the insiders will understand that market cap is not a real good measurement of a coin. But I think the corporate coins will take advantage of the current situation over there on CoinMarketCap and try to manipulate it. So, we're interested. This is very. I'm glad to hear your opinion on this. That your Libra's going to happen, and then all the rest are going to follow. So we shall see.
I think a lot more will happen before Libra. I think the other countries are going to try and get in before it. And so, I mean, WeChat hasn't launched their cryptocurrency yet, but they already disrupted cash in China. And WeChat literally had such a huge impact in China. You don't pay your taxi in China with cash. You pay with WeChat. When they launch their own cryptocurrency, that's instantly going to be, could even be bigger than Facebook.
This is true, and I'm glad you can give us this Asian perspective. We sometimes forget what's going on over there. You're right. A company there could just jump ahead. They don't have to. They probably don't have to go through as much as Libra. It seems to have to go through here in the United States. So good point about that. It is earth-shattering. By the way, I didn't mention this before we spoke, but there was news the other day that a major bank in China listed on a website said how to use cryptocurrency to its users. Did you hear about that at all?
I missed that one, Adam. There's so much going on right now. It's like you just can't keep up with everything.
And that's the thing. In China, back in the day, back in 2016, if there would have been news out of China like that, China was the thing. If a bank in China was talking cryptocurrency back in the day, 2016, it would have been the biggest news, and everybody would. But it was just a story that I heard in passing at the beginning of the week. So that is an interesting perspective. And we used to. I can remember conversations with you. We were talking. China made it illegal again, or China banned it again, and it's the world has moved on from the crypto world has moved on from being fixated on whatever comes out of China now.
The first for those of you who don't know the background, in 2013, the Chinese government, the Chinese TV released a documentary on Bitcoin, which drove the first real speculative frenzy within Bitcoin, or one of the first speculative frenzies. And the way that TV works in China is you don't get on TV as a documentary unless the government want you to be there. So a lot of people were speculating on whether the China politically were allowing Bitcoin to go on TV and drive adoption as a hedge to try and compete with the dollar, or have different, create some kind of disruption within the dollar. And then they banned it, then they didn't ban it, then they banned it, then they didn't ban it, then they banned exchanges, and it's just the China's relationship with Bitcoin has just been a constant to and fro since 2013.
Well, something that Bitcoin has not experienced yet, and which doesn't have that much to do with China, is a Fed rate cut. Until the other day, the Fed cut rates. And this is the first time this has happened during Bitcoin's life. The last Fed rate cut was beforehand. So what's your take on it? What's it going to do to Bitcoin, if anything?
I mean, it's really significant that the fact that the stock markets are at all-time highs. We've got, these markets that are really pumping into new time highs. Everything is allegedly as it should be. Trump says the dollar is going to be here forever. It's the strongest currency in the world. And it will always be and never change, despite the fact that every 50 years, current world-dominating currencies always change. Yet they are cutting rates. That's a very bearish sign for the economy and for whether things are actually, going to plan in terms of where we are right now. The US government said that the Treasury Finance Minister, he said that they've hit $22 trillion of debt in the States. And if they don't raise the debt ceiling in September, then they can't meet their liabilities and they can't actually meet their obligations. So literally the US debt cycle is at its all-time high at the point where they run out of money in September. Everything's meant to be okay. The stock markets are at new all-time highs, and they're now cutting interest rates in order to get more people into debt because it's a debt-based economy. And so if they cut interest rates, people can start borrowing more, companies can start borrowing more, and the government can roll over their debt a bit more and make their debt a bit cheaper by cutting interest rates. It's a classic definition of a Ponzi scheme.
Well, do you think so? There's going to be more money flowing around now because people aren't going to be
Yeah.
keeping their money in the bank because the rates are going lower. Do you see some of this money flowing into Bitcoin?
I mean, absolutely. There's a fight, there's an institutional fight for yield at the moment. Nothing is yielding. They're getting negative returns from bonds. Lending to the government is a foolish way to actually invest funds at the moment. Stock markets are, really feeling like they're overheated. There's no justification because it's all fueled by debt consumption. All these companies and all these corporations, everybody's buying on credit cards, everybody's owning their home on mortgages. Everyone's living paycheck to paycheck, month to month, with the exception of the top 1%, which own all the assets that are benefiting from that. But the economy is not in a good place at all. It's perpetuated by quantitative easing, excessive levels of debt that are completely unsustainable, and a belief that they never have to repay that debt, and therefore the lower, the more you debase your money, that people are banking on their debt just being pardoned and disappearing with the banking system. I do think that these stable coins and digital currencies, we talked about it many times on the show, are going to be used to bail out the banking system when the next systemic risk event happens, which I believe is very close.
You actually, on a show of yours, you mentioned this scenario happening in Japan, I believe, that they're already preparing for this, you think?
The countries that are in the highest levels of debt, that are creating good regulatory structures for cryptocurrency exchanges, and have them are in a position where they want to do some kind of redistribution. I think Japan's perfectly positioned to try and capture a lot of that. And a lot of countries are developing their cryptocurrencies right now. And I believe that it's all a hedge, so that when banks go bust, people don't lose their money; they just replace it with a digital wallet, so that when they can let the bank go bust, and then you just download a wallet, which would be a digital representation created by the central bank, with all these financial technology companies building on top. And I think we're going to have like one of the really, really big systemic risk event that's going to be blockchain, and all these stable coins and cryptocurrencies are going to be used to bail out the system. And then Bitcoin just chugs along as a fixed money supply, encouraging savings and rewarding people for moving into a savings-based economy and away from a debt-based economy.
Now we're talking about corporate coins. We talked about stable coins. We're talking about countries preparing to jump into cryptocurrency. Yet, and the Bitcoin price has been rising over this year. Definitely, people have been buying Bitcoin. But I am starting to get the impression that it's not individuals on the retail level that are buying it as much as we might hope so. I think it's a lot of corporations, a lot of people in the financial institutions that are the ones that have gotten into Bitcoin during this bull run. And I think a lot of when it's so obvious to me how big, how earth-shattering this next decade is going to be in terms of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. I mean, just that, every major corporation is going to have their own coin. That individuals don't see this and aren't going to get into it. I think we're going to end up with a lot of disappointed individuals and a lot of people pointing to us as the new 1%ers. The individuals who got in on this. Do you think, who do you think's been buying it lately? Do you get that same impression that I'm getting, that it isn't individuals? I don't think the retail space is growing too much.
I do agree with that. I believe that we're about to see one of the largest wealth redistributions that we've ever seen for decades, in fact, between people that have Bitcoin and people that don't have Bitcoin. I believe that what we're about to see is really going to be and I've started recently turning to creating live content almost every day.
Yeah.
To try and help people navigate some of these trends, because I really do believe that if you're on the wrong side of this trend, there is going to be a real big wealth redistribution. I think a lot of corporations, entities, institutions have filled their boots with Bitcoin. They're extinguishing the supply out because they're all long-term hodlers. And so the supply of Bitcoin is just getting scarcer and scarcer and scarcer. And my fear is that the average retail person, they're not going to jump on board again until we hit 20,000, hit all new time highs and get the FOMO effect, which is always the way. Retail, they're always on the wrong side of the trend 90% of the time. That's just, Bitcoin doesn't change that. I just hate to be one of those people that get caught on the wrong side of this and don't have Bitcoin. It's going to be a real crying shame to see that, but the majority of people aren't going to believe it until it's the point when everyone believes in it.
Remember, everyone, check out the links below. You can follow Simon on Twitter, and he is doing new shows a lot. I've been noticing him, retweeting them. Pound that like button for Simon. Pound that like button for me. Pound that like button for all the holders of Last Resort. And you just said something that's very interesting. But retail's on the wrong side 90% of the time. What was that you just said?
So it was the rule of the stock market. So it goes back to my market making days. Retail is always wrong. 10% make money in the market, so at the expense of the 90%. And retail are always on the wrong side, of the trend. And that's the same with crypto.
Yeah, but it's so it's so obvious to us. I guess if you're watching this in 2025, it's probably obvious to you by now also. Well, speaking about, that you were in the traditional finance at one point, and are now in the wacky world of the wild, wild west of crypto. There was just news that came out that, Ledger X was going to be the first to launch physical Bitcoin futures and beat out Backed. But then the next day, CFTC says Ledger X not approved to launch physical Bitcoin futures. So it was fake news. We seem to get this a lot. A lot of people rushing to break a story that's not even a story. So what's your take overall on Ledger X and Backed, and your overall take on the fake news that is just all around the cryptocurrency space?
Yeah, oops. So Ledger X is an interesting one because it's been really behind the scenes since 2014, and I think it was just around the corner of being approved by CFTC. I remember the original funding round they did was just around the corner from being approved by CFTC. I was surprised to see a re-emergence of Ledger X because I thought it would have kind of just disappeared into quietness. But it was good to see that it came back, but it looks like, I know that it's really challenging when you're dealing with regulators, having been on that side of the process. So when we were looking at changing laws around allowing people to invest online at Bank to the Future, we started in 2009, and we were almost about 3 months away from being authorized for 4 years. I remember the process going through. This was the UK regulators at the time. We were actually authorized. We actually got the permission, and then the person that worked at the regulator left, and we had to start the process again almost 6 times. And so I do kind of empathize with. I've been in a situation where a regulator has given us the green light, and then the next day you get a conflicting thing. So there's probably more to this story, but I really empathize with that situation because we went through a 3 to 4 year time frame of every day thinking that we're 3 months away from launch. And it's really, really, a painful process. And I imagine Ledger X have been through that. Not sure what specifically happened, whether Ledger X announced it or whether the regulators gave them information to believe that they could announce it. But yeah, it's a bit of a whoopsie and a bit of a PR disaster.
Okay, well, I'm glad you could add to that story there with your own experience. That is very, very enlightening. Now, I actually want to go back to what we were talking about before with retail not jumping back into Bitcoin until we reach an all-time high. And it boggles my mind that all the regular investors of this world are regular Joes out there. They heard about the 19,600 high or 20,000, whatever they want to call it. And they've got that number in their head. And so they're not impressed at all by this, 5-digit realm that we're in, that, you know, Bitcoin is around $10,000. It is such a shame that they do not have the perspective that there are all these people out there who just don't think it's spectacular that Bitcoin is at $10,000, around $10,000. I mean, they have no memory of 2016 when it was in the 3-digit realm. You know, it was that last, or the first day of 2017 is when it got to $1,000 again. And that if an all-time high is what it takes to get the 90% in the Bitcoin, I mean, it just shows you why that we're always going to have this so-called wealth inequality out there. I don't know. You've really you know, got me thinking when you mentioned that specific thing, that you don't think that people are going to jump back into Bitcoin until it hits the all-time high again. It's unbelievable to me that because again, I mean, we're in this little bubble of cryptocurrency fans, and it seems like, I mean, we are pumped. Everyone's happy. There definitely is money coming in, but the more I think about it, it doesn't seem like there's that many new people that are coming in as compared to, you know, during 2017, during the ICO thing. My Lord, that was like every day it was a new person, a new channel, a new this. So yeah, it's unfortunate. I guess this is how bubbles happen. I guess that's what.
Yeah, we go through cycles of adoption. We'll go through it again, I'm almost certain. And I think the next one will be driven by a reallocation of assets from traditional markets to crypto. I really see that as something that's coming around the corner. And retail will start getting on board that once it hits all new time highs. Yeah, it's just, you know, but you also have to appreciate it. But, you know, in terms of if you were just in this for, you know, the ability to increase your wealth, then the game that you're playing is believing in something before everyone else believes in it. Because the day that everyone thinks that Bitcoin is just this great thing that's not a Ponzi scheme, that's not a scam, and is not a currency just for drug dealers, then Bitcoin will probably become a real store of value at that point, where it's stable and people use it like gold to preserve wealth rather than increase wealth. But while it's in the speculative phase of being you know, people are speculating on whether it can become a store of value, then the opportunity for ultra high profits exists from those that get the trend right. And so the day that everyone believes it is the day that, you know, that there might not be opportunity for huge gains. Yeah. And then it can become a medium of exchange and units of account at that point. But right now, you want the more, you know, if you're trying to accumulate, then the more people that don't believe in it, in something that I'm certain is going to make a huge impact in the world, then, you know, the higher the return for as people come on board and discover it.
You know, going back to the corporate coins, once they come along, that's going to be a lot of free marketing for cryptocurrency. Do you think that could wake people up? You know, once Facebook has a coin, once Amazon has a coin?
Yeah, I think just having, you know, the fact that Facebook's cryptocurrency will be driving lots of people in, and you have all these different services, these technologies that people are used to that have masses and masses of users. And they'll start using it to be exposed to it for the first time. And then at some point, they're going to be exposed to that chart of what happened to the Libra cryptocurrency that's pegged to a basket of dollars and euros and gold and all this stuff, that's going through either, you know, cycles of inflation, deflation, whatever it might be. But then it's going to be priced against Bitcoin. And at some point, people are going to say, well, I'm using this money, you know, to make expenses, but look what's happening to my savings. And they're going to see those charts against those that saved in Bitcoin versus those that saved in Libra. And they're going to question whether they're making the right financial decisions.
Wow, those that saved in Libra, what a world we're about to enter. Pound that like button. Let's talk about the IRS letters. A lot of Americans were freaked out when they started to hear that they were going to get letters from the IRS. Do you think this is going to turn some former people who were positive about cryptocurrency off? Could this cut down on altcoin trading? You actually had a video that discussed, will this help define what Bitcoin is in terms of Bcash and BSV? Tell us your thoughts on all this.
Yeah, so I released a video after the IRS because tax and crypto is a very tricky situation. I do appreciate the way the IRS went about this. They sent letters, stating, we believe that you have cryptocurrency, and if you didn't file those tax returns, then this is a good opportunity to correct that mistake. And really, that's, to me, I see that as an opportunity for you to try and correct your mistakes. If you have made mistakes, and the rules, I guess the main things, I'm not a tax advisor. I tried to give as best advice as I could. I just was going through all the different things you really need to consider when putting together a tax strategy. But the key to it is that if you were trading, then you are creating taxable events, and you are probably going to have to price those taxable events to the dollar, and the more frequently you were trading, the more price events you need to figure out, and you will be, it's treated as property, and so therefore there will be gains and losses, and you're really going to have to get a CPA and an expert to kind of help you with this stuff. But yeah, I mean, it's an opportunity to either, you will, obviously in the US, there's only one way of getting out of the system that I know of, is to relinquish citizenship, through a very lengthy process, or you look at the Puerto Rico strategy. But yeah, if you decide that where you want to live, if it's important that you live where you want to live, then you're going to have to adhere to those rules. And, the IRS is going to be looking for the money grab. They've got $22 trillion of debt that they're allegedly trying to pay off, and they're saying that they run out of money in September. They're going to want as much tax as they can, and cryptocurrency is a really big cash grab for all the people that have made significant wealth converting their fiat to crypto, and all the gains that have been accumulated across there. That's something that they're going to invest significant resources into.
What were the...
But remember, if you haven't sold, you don't pay tax yet.
What did you say? Excuse me, I didn't hear that last thing.
Well, if you haven't sold or you haven't traded, then you haven't created a taxable event yet. So you can then have the time to do some tax planning and figure out what you want to do. It's only when you've got a base where you accumulated cryptocurrency, and the more time that you traded it, or you create more and more taxable events. So the sensible approach of just leaving it where it is. And if it accumulates into significant wealth, then you can do some tax planning around that and act accordingly.
That's what I say to people: do nothing. Just have a strong hand. Be the holder of last resort. People are always asking me, why didn't you trade it? Why didn't you sell it at the top? Well, here, this is why we're living it right now. If you just hold it, you're in fine shape. Now, how did you relate BSV and Bcash to this in that video of yours?
Well, there's a number of different schools of thought. If you want to take the most conservative approach, then you received your Bitcoin Cash for free. And therefore, one really conservative school of thought is pricing it at zero. And then if you converted it to Bitcoin, then you'd have to take the dollar value of the Bitcoin you converted it to, and then you'd have to pay tax on those capital gains. That's the most conservative approach. I believe that there might be other people that believe that this could be considered a different way, but this is a tricky thing because there's no real guidance on this stuff. And so,
yeah, there's a congressman from Minnesota who's working on clarifying that aspect of all of this. There was a story about this a few weeks ago. But you said in your video this is to help define what the real Bitcoin is. How did you? I didn't hear that part.
I think I remember what I said. There's a lot of stuff I spontaneously come up with and don't remember what it is. But I guess this is where you really get the definition of Bitcoin, because obviously some people are going to come along and say, well, no, Bitcoin SV has been around since 2009 and it's the original Bitcoin. Well, try telling that to your tax advisor when you file your tax returns. And really, the how you treat Bitcoin Cash, Bitcoin SV, Bitcoin is going to be really defined by the IRS probably. And so they're adding to the conversation and the debate around what is Bitcoin, because the tax treatment of these hard forks is really going to be leading to some kind of a decision on how you need to treat it legally for tax reasons, and put an end to the debate about what is Bitcoin. Because if you're trying to argue that Bitcoin SV is Bitcoin and it's been around since 2009, then you've got to look at your tax treatment accordingly. My guess is that they're going to take the date that the Bitcoin SV was deposited to your wallet, or you did something to gain your Bitcoin SV, and they're going to determine that that is not Bitcoin. Bitcoin is the thing that gave you the hard forks.
Exactly. That's a good take on this. A good, who likes taxes, but at least it will be a reminder of what for the people that are still confused, what the real Bitcoin is. That Bitcoin is the next Bitcoin. Pound that like button. Hey, I've got a question. Litecoin halving. It's actually like in 3 days. I mean, did you even hear anyone mention it? You see, back a few months ago or a year ago, people were like, oh, it's going to be a big thing. And even I had hoped that it would wake up people to the Bitcoin halving coming up. It doesn't seem like that many people are talking about it, or it's that big of a deal.
No, I mean, Litecoin has its main following in China because, Charlie Lee is a huge celebrity within China, and his brother Bobby Lee that created BTCC, one of the first exchanges that got large volume in China. It's, Litecoin is something that miners in China really, really appreciate. It's got a large community in China. But I don't know. It's just, I don't have anything to say about Litecoin, really.
That seems to be the big news around the Litecoin halving. I've got nothing to say. Same thing. But I just, it'll be a lot more people talking about the Bitcoin halving as we get closer to that.
Yeah, but remember, the halving traditionally has always been very disappointing on the day of the halving.
Of course.
And most of the effects tends to come in about 6 months prior to the halving. And then you tend to actually get disappointment and a correction during the actual halving. And then traditionally that's been followed a few months later by a real bull run in all the halvings I've seen anyway.
And I want to remind some people are going to say, well, but Litecoin has tripled in price since the beginning of the year. Well, wait a second. So is Bitcoin. You see, in terms of Bitcoin, Litecoin really hasn't gained very much at all since the beginning of the year. So one has to wonder.
You can't price it in dollars. With crypto, you need to be using Bitcoin as the base pair, and then you need to be determining how things are performing against Bitcoin. Because really, Bitcoin is where you could have had your money. Dollars is not really a fair comparison because you're trying if you're playing the crypto speculation game and you're trying to outperform Bitcoin, you're not trying to outperform dollars.
Yeah, you value your wealth in Bitcoin, and my point is that Litecoin probably went up in value because, well, Bitcoin went up in value, and since the beginning of the year, a lot of the currencies. I don't think the Litecoin halving has provided much momentum for the price change in Litecoin.
Litecoin, you just got to ask yourself the question: is where is the demand for Litecoin coming? Who is using Litecoin, and where's the demand going to come from? And so when you're halving, you could reach to the stage where you're releasing, but the whole economics of Bitcoin is designed around the concept that there is increasing demand in order to use it at the same time as the supply decreasing. It doesn't really matter if the demand for using it isn't going up, but then the supply of new Litecoin is halving because there's still not enough demand to suck up all the Litecoin.
There we go. Simple supply and demand, people. Well, let's talk. You mentioned India in one of your videos lately, how they're doing everything wrong. Not a surprise. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so India has become the new China in terms of flip-flopping around cryptocurrency. It's banned, it's not banned, it's banned, it's not banned, it's banned, it's not banned. But India is like such an important economy in the world, like the second largest population in the world, a nation of people that truly are skeptical about the banking system and decided to opt out of banking and stay with cash. India has a huge problem with tax collection, which is what has triggered off their latest policies. But Bitcoin is so perfect. I was really bullish on India and Bitcoin, and invested in several companies in the area, because it's a nation of people that are skeptical about banking. They understand the value of savings, making generalizations obviously here. They are the largest consumers of gold in the world. They really have a belief in the value of gold. And so they're perfectly positioned to actually accept Bitcoin. Plus, there are a large population of freelancers that work for international companies that find it very hard to get paid in their local currency. And so therefore a currency, like, they truly understand the challenges around pricing your service in one country but needing to spend it in another, and all the challenges around that. So they're very used to some of the challenges that are faced around with Bitcoin. But what India has chosen to do is that they're trying to compete, trying to make sure that Bitcoin doesn't succeed defensively in their country. I think it was a reaction, the ban on cryptocurrency, or the proposal. They came out and said it's not a ban. The proposal for a ban was in reaction to Facebook's Libra, because Libra, when they first came out, they said they wanted to target WhatsApp in India. And so they really realized, the US is going to have data on all of India's people through WhatsApp. And so they didn't want the US to have all that data, so they defensively tried to create a cryptocurrency ban and take their policies to the next level. But they're driving all of the people to putting their cash into the banking system, and they're forcing them to get into banking. And that's driving a movement away from a savings-based economy to a debt-based economy. So they're following the Western model, and they're leveraging up, they're making bank deposits, trying to make bank deposits the primary currency, because they want to do tax collection, obviously. But this is driving a savings-based economy into a debt-based economy by using the banking system, when really, if they wanted to achieve a similar result, they can just create a digital version of their currency, and automate tax collection through the blockchain and all the things that they probably would be doing, rather than driving people into debt through the banking system, when they could be leapfrogging and also supporting the growth of Bitcoin as well as an alternative savings thing to gold.
Well, India's a basket case. Hopefully, it's a shame. It's a shame because it's the second largest population. It'll be the largest population on Earth one of these days, probably. We shall see. I really do hope for the people that it gets easier for them to at least hear about it and get into it. And yeah, Libra still says it's targeting developing nations, by the way. So
yeah, and another thing to add to the conversation is there was, as with China, when they did the exchange ban, there was an incredible amount of scams. I remember during the ICO boom in China, there was 10 projects where I was listed as an advisor, projects I'd never heard of, never had any connection to. Somebody did an ICO for Bank to the Future in China, and it wasn't us. But the same was happening in India. There's an incredible amount of Ponzi schemes, with cryptocurrency. And in India, a lot of people were being really, really tricked by these, really nasty Ponzi schemes and MLM schemes and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, that's the thing, people. That's why you don't really diversify for the sake of diversification, because you don't know what the heck you're diversifying into. Stick with the real thing, Bitcoin. Don't get MLMs. We've been hearing about MLMs since 2013, actually. Scams in Africa, all over, and they're not going away anytime soon. It is the wild, wild west. People, if you see, that's just, they have no shame to use your face and your name on all sorts of ICOs. It'll happen again. They do it with all the faces and names out there. It'll probably be worse, counterfeiting. Anyway, okay, so let's, we're at the end of the show here. Your things that were left out, you want to mention anything you want to talk about that's going on with you? Obviously, you said you're putting out a lot of content lately, which is really an awesome thing. Really great.
Yeah, I mean, I just decided to take the time out to try and educate people. There's no agenda in it. It's just simply trying to help people navigate. You know, a thought that came to mind the other day is that we all, although we might not want to be speculators, like we might just want to sit and we are all driven to speculation, whether we choose to it or not. And one thing is that we are all going to have to make a decision about whether we take on debt, whether we save money, whether we put money into real estate, whether we hold money in Bitcoin, or we just hold it at a bank, or whether we rely upon our pension and our insurance contributions. And all of these decisions are really speculative decisions that everybody needs to make. But most people are just giving that to someone else to make that decision, or they're just saving in a currency that they were told that they need to save in, or they're just taking on debt in a currency. And these are all decisions that people are making in everyday life. And I think the reason I started to want to give more content is I just want people to become more conscious and aware of the speculative decisions that they're making in their everyday life that they may not be aware of. And just really give a commentary as all of these different stuff are happening. I've never seen I've never been involved in anything that moves so fast as this industry. And at the same time, countries around the world are experiencing some really, really challenging things. The whole world is an experiment we've never been in before. This is all uncharted territory. And if I can give some information that helps people make their own better decisions, then I just decided to just carve out some time each day to create some content on the latest things that are happening with no real agenda other than helping people find out and make better decisions.
Well, thank you for doing that, Simon. Thank you for being on the show. Uncharted territory, people. That's the kind of term that gets me excited. I want to be in uncharted territory. I want to be in an industry where you don't know what's going to happen next, where it's a new world. This is a golden age we're living in with so much opportunity. So be in motion like Simon Dixon. Pound that like button. Simon, thank you very much. I'm Adam Meister, the Bitcoin Meister, Disrupt Meister. Check out Simon's links below. Follow him on Twitter. He posts all his media there. Bank to the Future, all of that. You can follow him there. It's linked to below. I'm Adam Meister, Bitcoin Meister, Disrupt Meister. Subscribe to the channel, like this video, share this video, pound that like button, bang that bell button. I do this show every Friday. This is the This Week in Bitcoin show. Every other day of the week, there's a new show here. So a new show here every day. Everybody have a great weekend. Shabbat Shalom. Thank you, Simon. Bye-bye, y'all. See ya.